I'm Susan Yockey with VOA's Middle East Monitor. Coming up, the Palestinians welcome and the Israelis condemn a UNESCO vote. Could the eldest son of late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi be heading to Niger? Tunisia is testing a newfound freedom of expression. Muslim, Jewish, and Christian friends share insights into faith.
It's brought comfort to the afflicted. It's brought courage to the weak. It's brought a sense of spirituality into personal lives.
It's all ahead on VOA. The vote by the United Nations Cultural Agency, UNESCO, to accept the Palestinians' bid as a full member brought quick but expected reactions in Israel and the Palestinian territories. As VOA's Scott Bobb reports from Jerusalem, the Israeli government said UNESCO's action in Paris would harm efforts to revive the Israeli-Palestinian peace talks.
A foreign ministry statement called the action a unilateral Palestinian maneuver that further removed the possibility for a peace agreement. Palestinian leaders welcomed the vote, calling it a historic moment that gave Palestinians back some of their rights. The head of Jerusalem's Palestinian Academic Society, Mahdi Abdul Hadi, called it a positive move.
This is a very good news for history, for culture, for heritage, for identity, for self-dignity. This is very good news for those who believe in the Palestine cause, and it's time overdue to recognize the Palestinian rights.
107 UNESCO delegates voted in favor of the Palestinian bid. 14 voted against, while 52 abstained. Many analysts said the vote would boost the Palestinian move for UN state membership launched at the General Assembly last month. However, Hebrew University professor Abraham Diskin said the vote, from a practical point of view, does not help the Palestinian cause.
What the Palestinians really have to look for is the establishment of a Palestinian state, and this is not going to be implemented by a decision of an international organization, of course not UNESCO, but even the General Assembly.
Palestinians said they will call on UNESCO to recognize key monuments in the Palestinian territories as World Heritage Sites, such as the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. Several Western governments say Palestinian membership in UNESCO or the proposed membership in the United Nations will not help end the Middle East conflict. They say only direct negotiations between the Palestinians and the Israelis can do this. In addition, the U.S. government will be required by a law passed 21 years ago by Congress to cut off funding for UNESCO. Washington provides 22% of UNESCO's budget. Diskin from Hebrew University said UNESCO admission is an achievement for the Palestinians from a public opinion point of view and a defeat for Israel. But he says the long-term effects may do more harm than good.
It will irritate too many people in the Israel arena and will make too many people in the Palestinian arena overconfident.
Abdul Hadi of the Palestinian Academic Society disagrees.
The peace negotiation now needs a different path. It needs an international conference. It doesn't need anymore to sit in a closed room in Jerusalem or Ramallah to discuss Palestinian and Israelis. Now it needs the world to share together with the Palestinians, with the Israelis, how to formulate the map of Palestine into a solution.
Political observers say UNESCO admission is likely to boost the popularity of the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas. It was dealt a blow 2 weeks ago by a deal between rival Hamas and the Israeli government to release more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for a Hamas-held Israeli soldier. Scott Bobb, VOA News, Jerusalem.
Israel was one of the first countries to answer Turkey's appeal for help after the recent deadly earthquake. It was an important gesture as relations between the formerly close allies had hit rock bottom. Businesses between the two countries, however, has continued to boom. Dorian Jones reports from Istanbul.
Turkey downplayed Israel's offer of post-quake help, saying Israel was just one of many nations providing aid to the country's battered southeast. Both sides have dismissed any hope of any early thaw in their icy diplomatic relations. But that has not affected the booming trade between the countries, according to chief economist Emre Yiğit, who works for the Turkish financial trading house Global Securities.
Overall, it appears that Turco-Israeli trade relations have not suffered in the slightest.
The ongoing political fight saw Ankara expelling senior Israeli diplomats earlier this year, but the trade attachés were allowed to remain. Israel's trade attaché in Istanbul, Joe Abraham says business people have different perspectives than politicians.
Business is a long-term effort, so it doesn't surprise me. It's a long-term effort. Companies and people, when they do business because it's a win-win solution. It's business, and people are willing to do business because they need each other. Trade between Israel and Turkey is actually very complementary.
Israel exports chemicals, agricultural products, and high-tech manufacturing machinery to Turkey, while Turkey exports textiles and transport equipment to Israel. The economy in both countries is growing, and they are a good match, according to Menashe Karmon, president of the Israeli-Turkey Business Council. Bilateral trade increased 35% last year. He said the figure could have been even higher without the current diplomatic tensions. Doreen Jones for VOA News, Istanbul, Turkey.
Are you looking for a comprehensive daily look at events reshaping the Middle East? Visit voanews.com/me. You'll find VOA's original reporting from the region, in-depth analysis from our Washington team, VIP interviews, online polls, photo essays, and mini documentaries. Bookmark us or add us to your RSS reader. That's voanews.com/me.
NATO is ending its mission in Libya after a 7-month air campaign to protect civilians under a UN Security Council mandate. The alliance formally decided to halt the mission after the UN canceled the mandate last week, though Libya's transitional leaders had urged NATO to continue until the end of the year because of security concerns. Correspondent Al Pessin, now back in London, spent several days last week in Libya. VOA's Paul Westphaling asked him if there seemed to be any apprehension about NATO ending its mission.
On the ground, certainly in the areas where I was, in Tripoli, Misrata, and Sirte, and west of Tripoli to the Tunisian border, it's a very peaceful, very calm situation, and there's no more fighting. Any remaining Gaddafi supporters are laying very low at the moment. They are still obviously looking for Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam, and that was something that NATO might have been helping with, and the presence of those air patrols provided perhaps some sort of a security blanket for the NTC. But, you know, NATO's not far away. NATO still has bases in Italy and elsewhere in southern Europe, and they could resume if they needed to. But for now, NATO's feeling is that they don't really need to, and that it's time for Libya to move forward with its creation of a new democracy.
Gauging the opinion of the people in Libya, you've just returned there after spending a while inside the country in several locations. Is there a feeling that maybe this is the beginning of something new, or are people apprehensive that something could flare up and kind of derail this process?
Well, people, in fact, are very optimistic, and anytime I suggested anything about, internal differences and the difficulty of building a new democracy, people would wave their hands and say, no, we can handle this. We're all Libyans. We're going to deal with our disagreements and move forward together. And I think that reflects really sort of the still euphoria that they're in. Clearly, there will be issues, there will be problems, but for now, they're all focused on the end of the Gaddafi era, the end of the fighting, and the opportunity that they now have to build a new country. So, problems may surface. Democracy is not a clean and neat kind of a business, but everybody I spoke to was very optimistic about the future.
Now, you went to several locations when you were in Libya. One of them is Sirte. The main hospital there, you say, had been a target. That seems to be something that doesn't really go along with the rules of engagement, that somebody would really attack a hospital during hostilities.
Well, you're quite right, Paul. In fact, attacking a hospital is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions unless the hospital is being used as a base for an opposing force, which, as far as I know, it was not. So whoever did this was engaging in a war crime, was violating the rules of war. Some people believe that the rebel fighters were particularly harsh on the town of Sirte because it was Gaddafi's hometown, and they were sort of trying to punish it. On the other hand, if there were wounded rebels at the hospital, it could well have been the pro-Gaddafi forces that were firing upon it. So nobody really seems to know, but The fact is that the main operating room is destroyed. The hospital, when I was there a few days ago, had electricity but no running water. Very small staff. Most of the staff had not returned. So it was a pretty bad situation. And making it worse was the fact that people are beginning to return to the town, perhaps not to actually live there, but to clean up and to take some possessions from their homes and so on. And people were being injured by unexploded munitions that had been left behind, littering the city. In fact, I met 2 children in the hospital who had just found an unexploded grenade or something in their house, picked it up, and it exploded and injured these 2 young children. Fortunately, they will be all right. But the doctors were very concerned that they'd be getting more such cases in this hospital that just really has minimal facilities and minimal staffing at the moment.
Correspondent Al Pessin now in London after traveling in Libya. Meanwhile, Libya's outgoing provisional prime minister, Mahmoud Jibril, has confirmed the presence of chemical weapons in the country. He did not provide details on chemical weapons sites, but said representatives from international organizations are set to arrive this week to take care of the issue. The International Criminal Court is trying to arrange the surrender of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, who is on the run and could be heading for Niger. The new civilian government in Niger says the eldest son of late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi would be turned over to the court if he arrives in the country. VOA West Africa correspondent Scott Stearns has the story.
Saif al-Islam Gaddafi's been on the run since he and his father, the late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, fled Tripoli in August. ICC prosecutors say they're trying to arrange his surrender on charges of crimes against humanity. Throughout Libya's rebellion, several convoys of Gaddafi allies have crossed into Niger on what the government in Niamey calls humanitarian grounds. Habi Mohamedou Salisu is a senior member of Niger's coalition government. He says surrender is Saif al-Islam's best option. If the International Criminal Court is in talks with him, Salisu says it's best that Saif al-Islam go of his own accord, rather than be hunted and caught by Libyans, who Salisu says will end up killing him as they did his brother and father. Salisu says Niger does not know where Saif al-Islam is hiding, but that if he's in Niger, the government will discuss how best to transfer him to the International Criminal Court. Because Niger is a signatory to the International Court, Salisu says it's obliged to respect its commitments, but it will do so while protecting the life of all of those on Nigerian soil. Muammar Gaddafi remains popular among ethnic Tuareg in Niger and Mali, many of whom fought in his army. The late Libyan leader backed, then helped negotiate the end of Tuareg rebellions against the governments in Niamey and Bamako. The 2 countries say they're working together with Tripoli's interim leaders to arrange for the return to Libya of some Tuareg veterans of the Gaddafi army. Large groups of armed Tuareg who fled Libya are raising concerns about renewed instability in northern Niger and Mali, as well as the spread of weapons to al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorists in the Sahel. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Dakar.
If you crave the latest news and analysis about the Middle East, follow us on our Twitter feed. You can find it by searching @VOA Middle East. Every day we tweet VOA's own special reports, analysis, VIP interviews, photo essays, and mini documentaries. Plus, you'll get the latest buzz from VOA's Mideast team and correspondents. VOA Middle East on Twitter. Get a read on the news before it happens. Tunisia's revolution has exploded long-standing curbs to free expression. Media, civil society groups, and political parties are flowering. But as Lisa Bryant reports from Tunis, some also fear the rise of a new religious and social intolerance.
29-year-old journalist and blogger Haitham El-Mekki earns a living poking fun at politicians for Tunisia's popular Radio Mosaic. It's a kind of freewheeling satire that did not exist here a year ago. During the marathon presidencies of former dictator Zine El Abidine Ben Ali and his predecessor Habib Bourguiba, Tunisian media was censored, human rights activists were hounded, and many people were afraid to speak their minds. Many who did ended up in prison, including members of the moderate Islamist El Nahda party, which emerged the winner of last week's election. El Mekki counts among the young bloggers who drove Tunisia's January revolution that ousted Ben Ali.
If somewhere there was a demonstration on my town, I go to it, I make videos, I upload them on the internet, stuff like this, but I did not write a single word about the revolution on my blog. The bloggers of the revolution, which all the media talks about, are just people who reported about the revolution on social media.
Today, the options for free expression have exploded. Dozens of political parties and civil society groups have formed. Even the state media now criticizes the government. A survey by Human Rights Watch found all the parties running for elections were committed to free expression, but as Regional Deputy Director Eric Goldstein notes, with caveats.
If you press them on issues like defamation of religion, if you press them on whether a Christian has the right to stand in the street and urge people to convert to Islam, there's not as much unanimity on that.
Several incidents this year, including attacks on a synagogue and 2 movies considered to denigrate Islam, are raising fears of a new religious censorship in this once staunchly secular nation. Earlier this month, a small group of Islamist radicals attacked the private Nesma TV station after a broadcast animated movie, Persepolis. They took issue in particular with its depiction of God. Nesma's head, Nabil Karawi, describes the attack as a shock, but cautions against reading too much into it. Others believe the Western media has hyped up the incident.
I want to think that it was very special because of the elections, and now the situation will be more calm and more normal, and I'll hope that we will continue to find a way with this new constitution to have protections for media, because no democracy without free media.
But the attacks are raising new concerns about political Islam, particularly with El Nahda's strong show in the polls. Spokesman Yusra Khanouchi says the party is committed to free expression.
Freedom of the media as well, and of, artistic creativity. And at the same time, people may express their opinion, whether or not they agree with what is shown, as long as it is within the law and using peaceful means.
El Mekki worries about another kind of censorship. He says businesses stop advertising in media that criticize them. Sports fans are outraged when their teams get negative coverage. He believes Tunisia's new freedoms have bred intolerance.
It's just like Ben Ali left us with some 10 millions of Ben Ali. Everyone is trying to set up his rules and make himself command, control everything. Everyone wants to have the authority. Everyone wants to be the new dictator himself.
El Mekki hopes the new government and ordinary Tunisians will stay true to the principles of the January Revolution, a demand for dignity and freedom. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Tunis.
3 longtime colleagues of different faiths have forged bonds of friendship through decades of dialogue in interfaith forums. The 3 men, who are leaders in the Muslim, Jewish, and Christian communities of Los Angeles, California, recently shared their insights into religion with middle and high school students. Mike O'Sullivan reports the students learned that the men respect their differences and celebrate what they have in common.
They have known each other and worked together for decades. Maher Hathout, spokesman for the Islamic Center of Southern California. Leonard Bierman, the founding rabbi of the Leo Beck Temple, a Jewish synagogue. And the Reverend George Regas, retired rector of All Saints Episcopal Church in Pasadena, California. The students from Flintridge Preparatory School asked probing questions about violence inspired by religion. Rabbi Bierman told them that, sadly, evil is a part of religion's legacy, but that faith also plays a positive role in human development.
It's brought comfort to the afflicted, it's brought courage to the weak, it's brought a sense of spirituality into personal lives.
The students were interested in religion's place in the world and in individual life, and its role in the Middle East, says Egyptian-born Maher Hathout.
I noticed that they are engaging in a very healthy way. They are not watering down issues. They are asking serious questions. But somehow it's coming from a background of openness and a touch of innocence.
History teacher Michael Rafina says Flint Ridge Preparatory is a private institution, and teachers here are willing to discuss controversial topics like religion, something that does not happen often at public schools.
A lot of schools might shy away from this because religion is such a hot-button topic. I also think that some schools would find it much more convenient to just have these three speak.
But through 2 days of events, these students probed and interacted with the speakers. Episcopal clergyman George Regas says he and his colleagues have worked together on interfaith projects for more than 30 years. He says the three share a friendship and a passion for social justice, something at the root of all of their traditions.
Well, it's not a very common thing that a Jew, a Muslim, and a Christian could really be very much tied together over all those decades and really care for each other and support each other and differ with each other strongly, but with understanding and compassion.
The students learned something about religion, says 12th grader Vanessa Liu.
I think that all religion stems from like a basic human conscience, and we can all relate to that.
The interfaith dialogue delivered an important message, says student Brad Rohde.
I think it was mostly just kind of break down barriers, and everybody needs to work for peace, for, acceptance and tolerance and peace.
These students say the exchange gave them insight into the bonds of affection that can foster understanding across faiths. Mike O'Sullivan, VOA News, Los Angeles.
Now our weekly poll feature. And joining me is our Middle East online editor, Yuri Hiltaichuk, to sum up our last topic and share the results and get on to our new topic. Hi, Yuri.
Hi, Susan.
What you have for us this week?
Well, the big story in the news last week was the death of Muammar Gaddafi and the circumstances surrounding it, which, as a matter of fact, still remain rather murky. Basically, there were three versions out there as to how he could have died, and we asked our voters to tell us which they thought was the most plausible. One of them was that Gaddafi was executed by his captors, and nearly 70% of voters thought that this is what transpired. Only 3% thought that he died from injuries that he sustained in an attack on his convoy, and another 3% believed that he succumbed to injuries he sustained in an ensuing crossfire. We also provided another option for poll participants. That option was that the cause of Gaddafi's death was actually immaterial and that Libya should instead look to the future. And more than 24% of voters actually chose that option. These numbers are based on about 450 votes that we received, and as always, I need to point out that this poll is not scientific.
So what are we going to be asking this coming week?
Well, making headlines today is the UNESCO vote on the Palestinians' acceptance into that UN body. And we'd like to know to what degree this decision also has the support of our online community. And anybody can weigh in by casting their vote on our site, voanews.com/me. Again, that's voanews.com/me. And we'll meet here again in a week with the results.
Well, thank you very much, Yuri.
My pleasure, Susan.
That's VOA Middle East online editor Yuri Hiltaichuk in our Washington studios. Join us Monday through Friday for news from the region and of interest to the region. Coming up, we're going to go to International Edition. It's where we look at stories from around the world that are making news as well as from the Middle East. And on our program today, Kenya and Somalia call for more international help to defeat al-Shabaab. Thank you for tuning in to the Voice of America.
The news never stops,
So keep current on your mobile device with VOA News. Just go to m.voanews.com/English for instant, up-to-the-minute news and entertainment. Check m.voanews.com/English on your handheld device for news as it happens. Stay connected with a fast-changing world with m.voanews.com/English.